Hello and welcome back to Dr. Freda's Power Session, where we stop performing growth and start living it. I'm Dr. Freda, and this is a space for real conversations about self trust, emotional intelligence, and what it actually takes to lead yourself through life and love. Here, we don't rush healing and we don't sugarcoat truth. And we don't confuse awareness with transformation. Power isn't about having it all together, it's about being honest enough to show up differently with yourself first. Now, every session is an invitation to pause, reflect, and choose alignment over autopilot. Now, let's get into today's power session. Today's conversation is one a lot of people feel but don't have language for yet. We're talking about identity shifts. It feels disorienting, lonely, and even scary. And today, I am joined with a mindset coach by the name of Cindy Koehler. Now, Cindy knows a thing or two about ditching the good girl mask because after 20 years of leading Australia's largest holistic wellness business, she now works as a coach and mentor, helping women rewrite the limiting beliefs that keep them stuck. Now, her approach blends mindset and identity work with neuroscience and healthy dose of, you got it, sass. So whether it's toxic patterns, people pleasing, or chasing worth through productivity, Cindy has been there and now help others find their way out. And in her upcoming book, Manifest You, dives deep into how we can rewrite old patterns and finally feel at home in our own skin. It's not about bubble baths and vision boards. It's about getting real, setting boundaries, and building a life that feels good as it looks on Instagram. Without further ado, I would like to welcome my guest, Cindy Koehler. How are you, Cindy?
Dr. Freda, what an intro. Give that up. I feel much larger than I am in real life, and that's pretty large. That's a power intro. Thank you so much. It's so wonderful to be here. And I love how you don't sugarcoat what it is that you present to your audience. So, yes, it's just wonderful to be here and have this conversation about some very empowering and exciting and some neuroscience. I could talk about that for days, weeks, months. So let's get into it, girl.
My gosh. You know what? The first question I really want to ask you
hmm
is, and I know this probably sounds so foundational, but how did you come up with the name Mind Garage? I love that name of your executive coaching company. How did you come up with that? Because it's two powerful words put together.
It's a very personal thing, and I think in my years of coaching, 15 years, having delivered sort of over 10,000 hours to business owners and elite professionals, I think people sort of say, I just want business coaching or I just want life coaching. You can't separate the two. We
Mhm.
are, as business owners, it's a deeply personal thing. Our businesses, they reflect our values. And the name Mind Garage is a very personal piece for me. I'm very passionate about the mind and mindset and mindfulness. And I've been meditating since I was 21. So that's 40
Mm.
years of working in this space and exploring everything to do with mindfulness. So that's the sort of homage to that. And the garage is a homage to my love of cars. I am a car geek. I will bore you to tears about my love about all things automotive. And that stems from my father. He was a very beautiful man. He was a mechanic. He loved cars. He embedded that passion in me when I was a child. And so you'll see that the logo for Mind Garage is very much like a car badge or a logo. So it's a dual passion. It very much speaks about me. And I think thirdly, a garage or a shed whatever in the States, what do you call it? A garage? You do, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
garage,
garage. Yep.
garage or a shed. It's a place you go to find that sort of, the quiet hobby, to find the tools, to find the things that you have in there to do the work you need to do in the garden or on the piece. So it's a space that I went to as a child to go into to tinker around with my own thoughts, to build, to change, to create. So it was a good fit for me, and so yeah, I love the name. It tends to work pretty well for me.
Oh my gosh, I love that. We have a lot in common. My dad was a mechanic too, and you would
There you
not bore
go.
me to death with cars because my dad was a lover of cars.
I love your dad. I've never met him before. I'm sure he's a great person because of those things. Oh my
Yes.
goodness.
Yes. So let's just jump into this conversation that I think can heal and release so many people who will listen to this podcast. And the I want to ask you by first starting, when people hear the phrase identity shift, what do you think they misunderstand about it the most? Because I feel like we throw a lot of words around and people really don't have a base foundation, like a foundation meaning of what those words or phrases mean.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's probably a deeply personal thing that we would have to ask the individual about what it is that they actually thought identity shift meant. And the thing that I would see most commonly is less about that definition of what it is and more about when people are trying to create change in their lives, that they don't consider the identity in that change process. They consider more the external things in their life that they're attempting
Mm,
to change rather than what it is that they need to do internally and to do the inner work in that space. So when we look at, the classic example, because culturally we've just been through it, like around the world, is like the New Year's resolution, which time is a construct that us
yes.
humans have come up with. And yet it's around this January 1st period and leading up to it that collectively we tend to pick this time to kind of go, let's do some reflection. Let's see what we want to change. And commonly I hear things in, health or business that are the external, like, I want to go to the gym, or I want to drop this amount of weight, or I want to earn this amount in my business, or I want to make some major changes in my relationship, and they look outside of themselves. Whereas I think the major problem I would hear with people is that they don't look at it from an identity shift. So that they don't embrace that concept to start with, because it is something it's not an overnight piece of work. And it's definitely not a comfort piece.
Mm.
It's not a space that is easy to look at, and it does take some self-reflection and some time to be in that space. That change in that messy middle of that space of identity shift is not going to be in comfort. And so we tend to avoid it. Our minds will avoid it because it puts us in that position of threat. That would be the most common thing that I see, would be the avoidance of identity shift rather than the definition of. And I think that's something we're going to be very much forced to have a look at with AI coming into our life.
Mhm. Mm.
We are going to be forced to have a look at our identity a lot more closely in larger numbers, because of the way our world is going to change significantly in that space. So yes, that would be the most common thing that I see.
And you know what? You make such a great point when you say that people tend to bring external things to them because they don't want to do the work inside. And you have to go through it in order to get over it, to get on the other side of transformation, right? And People like to avoid the uncomfortable, but what they're avoiding is keeping them comfortable in an uncomfortable situation, if that makes
Mm,
sense. So you
yeah.
rather choose mess or something that you know that is not aligned with who you are because it's familiar to you, but it's uncomfortable at the same time.
Very much so. Yeah, you're spot on there because the brain has in its subconscious, it will take us to the edge of going to that discomfort. And then it will very much in the amygdala, our emotional side will go, that feels a bit uncomfortable. And we'll say to ourselves, oh, it doesn't feel right. And we'll tell ourselves the story of, I think I'm going to stay here and do this because to me it just doesn't feel right in myself. And it's not about being, it doesn't feel right, it just feels familiar.
Mm,
And it is in doing the unfamiliar that doesn't feel right in that space. It's moving into that space. And so we have our a very ancient brain telling us that steer away from that which we don't know. You know, a bad relationship that we know is better than not knowing who we might find, entering into a world on our own or, you know, into the unfamiliar. That would be that
mm,
unsafe space. Or staying with an eating pattern that brings us the feelings of comfort and contentment, even though we know it comes at a cost, is still going to be a place that we go to. And I question and I love playing around with the space like, what is it that we're really avoiding? What is the discomfort that we talk about? And it tends to be feelings or emotions that we don't want to sit with. Whether that's fear is generally like that primary emotion that comes up, you know. I don't want to leave that job or move into a different space because the initial feeling will be fear. What are those underlying feelings behind it? Are they vulnerability? Are they self-doubt? Are they a lack of belief in self? Are they, you know, grounded in, you know, some old beliefs that we have about ourselves that we got from childhood? And those can be quite uncomfortable. And those can, I don't just believe it's a mindset piece, it's a
mm,
bioneurological state,
mhm,
a change that we go, that is the messy middle,
mm.
is, you know, another example might be if we, you know, a lot of us are choosing to move away from alcohol, particularly as we get older. Australian culture is very grounded with having alcohol at different social settings. I can't speak from your experience, but our
We do.
family, at every celebration, there was always alcohol. And having worked and been in sobriety for the last 3 years, there is a discomfort in going into a new space that I feel the body's sort of neurologically aching to, you know, to drink some alcohol or to eat certain foods or to be in a certain social environment. So the change is just not a mindset piece.
Mm,
It is a full body transformation like you talk
mm,
about. It's not
mhm.
just this superficial thing that we deal with. Yeah, change is a fascinating process to work with.
It is. And it's I'm glad you brought that up about it's not just mindset. It's almost it's something that is within your body that people do not pay attention to. Then I was talking to someone the other day and he was saying that when he was raising his boys, they did something one day and he felt his chest tight, like literally tighten up because the anger was rising up. And he had to take a step back because he didn't want his boys to be on the receiving end of his anger. But he was aware enough to know that, okay, I feel it in my body first before I project it out to my children. And a lot of people are not, I don't know in Australia, but I know in America, we're not taught to sit with self. And you said you've been meditating since you were 21. And that is a powerful tool in itself to get back into self and just even know your body. And I started doing meditation. I started meditating early on as well, but I now realize so I sometimes I'll take like a bath and I'll lay in the tub and I just talk to my body. And I say, "All right, Frida, I need," and I use it like a pendulum actually. I ask myself questions and I'll let my body tell me to let me know what a yes means and let me know what a no means. So I know a yes in my body, my tummy flutters. Like it's like a flutter in my I don't know how to explain it besides a flutter in my stomach. If it's a no, my chest gets tight. This is not it. So I have to sit with my body and I say, okay, do I need to make this next move? And I can literally feel it within my body what the answer is. But that came sometime. That took a lot of work. I should say a lot of work, but it took time with self, meditating, getting back grounded within myself because I live up here sometimes and I have to get back down to here. But a lot of people are just not taught how to feel within. They just emotionally reactive. And then they go to, well, I feel disrespected. I feel triggered and I feel it's someone else's fault. And so they never investigate where the why, and you mentioned like the limiting beliefs. Let's uncover that. What is the underlying reason? Is it fear? Okay, fear of what? I had a client that was scared to lose their job, and when we finally uncovered, it was a belief on money and finances that didn't even have to do with her. It was her parents' belief that she carried with her for the last 30 years, and it was so false, but she carried that not only in her subconscious, but within her own physical body. So I really think that that's a powerful statement that you made that a lot of people are not really talking about. And it's a missing piece.
Missing piece, and it's a skill. Is something we can define that with practice and focus we can develop. Emotional intelligence is based in skill,
Mhm.
the ability to recognize a physiological response, to recognize a thought and associated feeling, to recognize that and bring in what we know is, metacognition, that ability to sort of step outside of ourselves and observe ourselves. We are the third party. And I think acknowledging and knowing that puts us in a position of power of stepping back and saying, look, there's the physical reaction. The father that felt the tightness, when the car pulls out in front of me, what sort of response am I having? And in being able to pull back, we give ourselves choice to go, okay, I can respond in this way or this way or this way or this way. Which way is going to be the most empowering, the most loving and kind for the people around me? Which is going to be the healthiest? Which is going to be helpful for us as community? And then I can make a choice and say, okay, when I'm having this conversation with this person, this is going to get me the outcomes that I'm looking for at the least cost to myself and to those people around me. It is very much a skill, the ability to observe self. And it is, I think meditation is one of those ways of stepping back into the quiet and practicing a skill of watching your brain.
Mm.
And then you choose, it's a riderless horse, like mine is. Like most of us, it's beautifully active. It's an incredible problem solver. It's this remarkable tool that I've been giving, but it's not the boss. That's in the space that I want to work and say, well, how do I want to use my mind, this beautiful ancient record of the past? How do I want to use it moving forward in life? How do I actively want to choose the way? So those are skills, and those are things that we can teach, and those are things we can teach our children. And those are things we can help each other learn as we go through life. Very much
Mm.
so.
That's beautiful. I I'm curious, what usually triggers an identity shift? And I want to actually ask that from you personally. What was that moment in your life, if you don't mind sharing, that you realized this is not who I am anymore? When you led the largest wellness company for over 20 years, that was part of your identity. It wasn't all you did, but that was like a major part of who Cindy was. What was that moment though when you said, this is no longer me, or I don't identify with this person anymore? And how did that shift look for you to now come into this second life that you have?
Yeah, it's a great question. My life has been a series of re-identifications, and I can acknowledge that those either have happened to me externally, like, the world has created that for me and I've had to change identities, or I've taken a very empowered position in making those decisions myself and stepping into that next part. And I think we could look at change as either like a significant pain hits us and we're in crisis and we have to change, or we take that internal position of being, I want to move to a greater space of pleasure. And if I reflect very quickly and go, my dad dying at when I was aged 11 was the external pain that shifted my identification from child to adult. Major car accidents have been big wake-up calls, the pain that's been the external. The internal major ones in my life have been, you know, choosing to leave certain roles to create the business initially. To leave a 25-year relationship was perhaps the most challenging thing I've ever done in my life, but that was an internal piece. And the business, creating like a really successful business that had multiple sites, a beautiful staff group, really good processes and systems, was a very conscious decision to acknowledge in myself how I valued growth in my life and how I actively put myself into discomfort by stepping out of that role and selling those businesses. I was very much seeking in my life simplicity and my next. And I didn't know what my next was. Against the advice of my accountant and a number of different people that said, well, why are you doing this? Because it's working and it's good. For me, I knew there was more and that I had started and invested a huge amount of time and energy into it. And I was very proud of what I did, and it was award winning and terrific. But I was very much in a position, I feel like I'm staying in the same space. I really need to do something quite drastic to really grow. And so that's when I made the decision to sell the businesses. And that's when I really stepped into the discomfort of like, okay, I'm letting go of that identity of being that business owner, and I'm stepping into space. And, when you step off the cliff and you kind of go, I don't know what's coming next. And it was very uncomfortable. It was very
Mm.
uncomfortable for a period of time. I didn't know. I'd tried some consultancy pieces and I really had to leave the space and be in a position, the very feminine position of allowing, and to get very clear about what was important to me at this point in my life. What did I value? What did that next role have to fulfill in me? How could I use 40 years in mindfulness meditation mindset, 20 years in education as a secondary and tertiary educator, 25 years in business? How could I take that triage of knowledge and bring it together and offer my next piece to the community to meet my needs of contribution and growth? So it was a very conscious decision. It was very empowering and it was very scary all at the same time.
Oh, I bet. But now on the other side or post 15 years you've been doing Mind Garage, what are some key lessons or reoccurring themes that woven themselves into your life from different aspects of your life? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think the piece about our lives are a constant re-identification.
Mm,
You know, the aging process just naturally unfolds and we go through this re-identification process. That change truly is the only constant. And embracing flexibility, adaptation, building resilience and courage,
mm,
finding tools that enable us to sit with ourselves and make good decisions. I would find those themes have been very prominent in my life. I I find that life is like a training in resilience, and all of us have challenges. Nobody's getting out of this easily. You know, you can either get them early in life, you know, with the death of my father, or
mm,
various people go through various challenges much harder than mine, and love and respect to those people. But it is like this training in resilience and getting up and going, who am I now? How
mm,
can I embrace that experience? How can I learn from it? What's the opportunity that lies in front of me here? And then moving forward and getting very clear about, I think, you know, a real guiding light for me has been, what do I want to feel on a daily basis?
mm,
What emotional states do I want to wake up and embrace? What is the thing that really lights me up?
mm,
Seeking out moments of wonder and awe in my life.
mm,
I want to I want to go after those with wholehearted. I want adventure. I want to be
mm,
excited and curious about life. I want challenge to help me grow as much as, you know, I say yes to that big keynote. And just before you get up on the stage, I say, what are you doing? Why did I put myself in this position? I'm terrified. I know that now is that opportunity of growth to step forward in that space.
mm.
So I think there would be those positions. How do I want to live my life? What is a joyful life for me in that space? Those would be the reoccurring things for me. It's an ongoing
Mm.
education. I don't have the answers, Doctor. All of the answers, Dr. Freda.
No, that is the beauty of life. The life is the process until you take your last breath, and that it is taking me a long time to even get to halfway where you were. So I appreciate the jewels that you are bestowing upon not only the listeners but myself as well. I definitely appreciate your words of wisdom. I do want to ask, in your opinion, from your experience, how do you know when do you know you're going through an identity shift? Like when is that when you're in that storm and you're like, "Oh, wow, what is happening?" Or is it you just wake up and you say, you know what? This no longer resonates with me. How do you know you're in that transitional state? And how do you, in the uncomfortable state, how do you keep going and not revert back to what you're comfortable with?
Great questions. Nobody's asked me those questions before, and I think they're really good questions. I've asked myself those questions. That's how sort of out there they are. So, how do you know that you're in it or going through it? So there's there's a precursor for me in that I am very intentionally creating the life that I'm trying to achieve. So I am, in a quantum physics perspective, I have a very clear vision of who it is that I need to become and what that person feels like in order to fulfill the things I want to achieve in my life. So on a daily basis, this is the person I am physically now with this skill set, knowledge, understanding, but I am emotionally out in the space of the person that stands in that position out there in 3 to 5 years. So the identity that I have here, the physicality of it, is in catch-up mode for the quantum physics of the person that I'm becoming. I know that I am in identity change when I'm starting to do the actions that bring about that person into reality. And it is in the actions that I feel the discomfort because they're the new bits, right? And in the practice of that emotional space on a daily basis, in those first sort of 30 minutes upon waking, is where I'm feeling the emotions of practicing and rehearsing being in that person. So that would be for me acknowledging it and knowing that I'm in that space. Sometimes when things change around you externally, the death of someone suddenly or a car accident suddenly, then you're kind of in it because the external is changing very quickly. My mum passing over 12 months ago was I knew I was in an identity shift because of her leaving me. I didn't know a life without a mother. And so now I'm still a daughter, but I'm a daughter flying solo on a physical ground.
Mhm.
And so it feels like emotionally there's a higher level of vulnerability in that space. So how do I cope with it? That was the second part of the question, wasn't it? What are
Yes.
the tools that I use in that space? Meditation would be one of those pieces that enables me to sit quietly with what it is that's going on and acknowledge it. And acknowledgement is not transformation, as you said in your intro. I think a lot of people say, well, I know I'm doing this, but that's not the change. So then I say, well, what support do I need in order to transition that emotional state? What help do I need? Asking for help is not an easy thing for someone like me because I'm the person that helps everybody else. So I have my own coaches, I have my own therapists, I have my own team around me that includes my loved ones, my beautiful wife, in which I go to and I verbalize my discomfort, and not in an attempt to dump it, but to seek support. This is how I'm feeling. And so I'm feeling a little bit like this today, a little bit vulnerable, a little bit scared. What are you observing? How can you support me? But I do work with professionals that help me coach, and I do work with therapists that help me through those things. I think having a really professional, educated, excellent team around you, including friends, including loved ones, that support you on that journey, that help reflect back perhaps behaviours that aren't as good as what they could be, would be really critical. And the third thing was journaling and writing
Mm.
as a way of self-reflection. I have some questions that I ask myself on a quarterly basis that are looking back self-reflectively and say, what were the moments of happiness and joy? What were the biggest challenges? What are my wins? What are my acknowledgements? What are my greatest learnings? Those sorts of questions. I do that quite regularly, and that helps me to process what is happening in my life, but also be really clear about, is this where I want to go?
Mm.
Is this the life I'm actively creating when I'm in the messy middle of it? Yeah. Am I hanging in there? Am I actively changing? So maybe the fifth thing is I try not to do too much at any one time. I like from a nutrition perspective at the moment, I'm just trying to eat a certain amount of protein.
Mm.
I'm keeping it very simple. I've had a look at the research. That's my only focus for my nutrition, is trying to eat this certain a number of grams of protein.
Mm.
And
I like that.
in my business, my focus is there's two very simple things. I'm working on this and I'm working on this. And in that way, when you're going through change, we tend to discredit the little things. We discredit those little 1%ers because they don't seem big enough, but they are the empowering piece. My next meal and all it has to have is this certain amount of protein. That's it. Simple, right? And today in my business, I just have to do two things: focus on that project and focus on that project. Like I've got to edit a chapter of my book. That's it. And then I've got to write a framework for a keynote. That's it.
That is so helpful. And you said a piece that you did say that is so important that a lot of people forget, even healthcare practitioners, is that you have so much self-awareness where you verbally communicate with your team, your partner, your wife, your loved ones. I am feeling this way. So I and you like you said, a person of your strength and your wisdom, it's kind of hard to ask for help. But you communicate that when you need it, and that's a level of vulnerability that I think is missing in a lot of, especially like health care practitioners in our line of work, where we're supposed to have all the answers. And I always use the analogy: no one ever asks the lion or lioness if she needs help. And so everyone gets tired. And I love that you said, you verbally communicate. Sometimes I need this help. I need this. And that in itself is grace and compassion that you're showing yourself as well. And then not overloading your plate. I like that.
Yeah.
I'm just now getting to that point.
Uh, I think like one of the most powerful conversations I had with my beautiful wife is when I'm at my worst,
Mm,
how does that play out for you?
mm,
Because we know those closest to us see the repercussions of those sides of ourselves that we don't show to other people
mm,
because of the intimacy of that relationship. I don't,
mm,
and I didn't, and I'm working towards being a more loving partner.
mm,
And so her support to me in the kindest, most possible way was reflecting back to me.
mm,
And we worked out a strategy whereby when she observed that kind of language, that emotion, that behavior that I
mhm,
didn't mean to, but I'm human, that when
mhm,
I was portraying that she could say, "What do you need? Do you need time out or do you need to talk to someone?"
mm,
And when she
mm,
said those 2 things, I could reflect back and go, "Oh, I'm not in my best self here.
mm,
I'm gonna stop, pause, not dump, not get overly emotional, not react, but
mhm,
just pause and go, okay, I'm here. What do I do here?
mm,
Okay." And it's been, I think, one of the most powerful conversations we've had in the last
mm.
sort of recent period of time as a tool to self-reflect and to empower that messy middle piece.
Mm. Now let me ask you, is your wife a healthcare practitioner? Is she a psychologist, or is she, because I want our listeners to know that these tools can be used in every relationship. Like you don't have to have a doctorate in psychology or anything like that. So is your wife a psychologist or anything in the mind space for her to be that space, that loving space for her partner to show up for you? I'm curious for everyone that's listening because that's a powerful tool to have.
Yeah, I know. My wife is all things to all people. She's incredible, but she doesn't have, any formal qualifications in this space at all. She does have life experience, but these tools, and I think we started conversations around this because we came to our relationship later in life, so we could be really clear about, what we wanted from our next partners. We're really open about that. And, we spent a lot of time with Brene Brown's Dare to Lead tools and
Mhm.
the piece that she writes about, rumble language. When you have to have hard conversation and you're smiling because you probably know, what are those precursors, like the story I tell myself is,
Mhm. Mhm.
when you go into the hard conversations, how can you use language to take ownership and responsibility for the messiness? These are tools that you don't need qualifications for, but you do need an open mindedness to take responsibility for your emotions. You do need to be curious about your situation. And I think you need to be very prepared to say, I'm responsible for my own emotional state. So playing above the line as the empowered one rather than below the line as the victim,
Mm.
it's a key piece in that space. But no, it's an ongoing thing. We are a work in progress like every relationship.
I admire that. And that is so many tools couples, individuals need to have in their toolbox. And it's so funny becoming full circle. I always teach people everyone needs a toolbox. And you need to go in your toolbox when life is happening, whatever it is at that moment, and reach in that toolbox. Like you said, in your garage, you go in and you get the tools, or whatever if you're gardening, if you're working on your cars, or whatever that is, you need that toolbox. When you finish your book, Manifest You, that's gonna be in my toolbox. What are some things, some practices that I can continue to incorporate or integrate into my life? And those that set of tools that you use in your relationship, that is something that people can use in their toolbox. And some people think that you have to have this formal education in the mind, and is you said it. Just be self-aware and showing up for first yourself so you can show up for your partner. And I think that is a missing piece in a lot of relationships. But you also said you all started that conversation on what you all looking for in that relationship. And then it's not so superficial, not surface level, right? So you all working and building towards something. And that is so beautiful. I admire you, Cindy. I definitely admire you. So
Thank you. That's a lovely thing to say.
before we end, what is that one piece of advice you want to tell our listeners today who may be going through a transition, a self identity, maybe thinking about it, but just scared, or to get over that hill, that hump, because the unknown is scary. What is that one piece of advice you would like to leave for our listeners?
Yeah. Don't do it on your own. Definitely, I think when you spend time in this space on your own, generally we will get into the mental churn and we will internally take ourselves through thought, feeling, thought, feeling, thought, feeling, thought, feeling, and then we'll build that up to a really escalated position. And there'll be, you know, greater fear, there'll be a greater story, there'll be a heightened emotional space in that. And when we're left to our own devices because of our minds, they tend to really grind and churn through. And when we're in our head, we're dead in that space. It takes us to drop down into our heart, to seek the support from professionals, whether that's coach, therapist, mentor, very good friend who's got some good tools in emotional intelligence. I think doing it with someone and getting help when you're going through change, whether that's, if you're doing physical stuff, you're working with a nutritionist or a personal trainer to help motivate, to help talk you through, to help guide you, to help be that person cheering for you on the sideline. You have a coach or, a therapist in that space. Is a much more accelerated process when you ask for help, when you seek support, when you get really good help in that space. You see change occurring in a safer environment where you are protected and confidential, where you feel nurtured and loved when you go through it, that you aren't left to the self-beration that can occur during change. Accepting that, you might take a couple of steps forward, you have a little bit of a step back and,
Mm.
you go through this process. Change it doesn't just unfold perfectly. It's in that space. So my number one always will be get some help. Coach,
Mm.
therapist, mentor, friend, support structure, PT, etc., etc. All of the people that are the specialists that can help you in that space. If you're going through divorce, you're looking at changing relationships, great divorce lawyers out there that offer great support. Going through career change, getting a career coach can really help you in that space. That would be it. Yep. Ask for help. We're much better when we work with other people.
I agree. And speaking of, how can we work with you? And can you give us maybe a time frame on when our next tool is going to come out for our toolbox? Your book, Manifest You.
Yeah, thank you very much for the prompt to get the work done on that. It is it will be out June, July, of this year. I'm very excited about it. It's not been something I've wanted to rush through. It's a lovely piece, so Manifest You will be out at that time, and if you wanna get in touch, I'm sure there's some links below in this process, mindgarage.com.au or cindy@mindgarage.com. If you've got any questions at all or you're mulling over change, then just flick me an email. It's an easy piece. But all the contacts should be below. Follow me on Instagram or LinkedIn or anything. I throw up a whole pile of free stuff that you can just listen to if you want to.
Thank you. Thank you, Cindy. And what I love about this conversation is the reminder that you gave our listeners that identity shifts, they're not failures, they're invitations. And you're not losing yourself, you're just shedding what no longer fits. And Cindy, thank you for bringing your wisdom, your honesty, and presence into this space today. And before we leave, I want everyone listening to remember who you're becoming requires you to release who you were brave enough to be. So until next time, I'm Dr. Freda, and I will see you next